Jessica Alstrom, spiritual teacher, medical intuitive, and quantum integration specialist, answers your spiritual questions and assists you through understanding your personal process while providing tools and techniques to move swiftly through the journey back to light.
Good morning, everyone. This is Jessica Alstrom. I have decided to do a podcast spur of the moment after Second Sunday yesterday for March 2016. This will kind of be a go-to podcast for anybody who is really trying to master and understand the law of attraction. This podcast is called The Dark Side of Law of Attraction. And I think many of you who have experienced working with the law of attraction to try to manifest something in particular have seen that there is usually a dark side that comes with any of our manifestations. And the question is, why? First, I want to introduce myself for those of you who are not familiar with me yet. My name is Jessica Alstrom, and I own Transcendence Wellness Centers. Transcendence Wellness Centers are a new type of wellness center that focuses on the root cause of suffering. Suffering could imply being broke. It could imply being depressed. It could be, struggling with addiction or physical pain in the body, or just a life that you feel isn't you. I mean, are you living a life that you feel isn't you? When you look in the mirror, do you recognize who you see? Do you like what you see? So what Transcendence does is it finds the root cause of suffering, and we go about that with all different types of modalities. I believe that at the science and core of spirituality, that all things serve a purpose, especially when we are investigating root causes. We've worked with chiropractors, we've worked with doctors, we've worked with psychotherapists, we've worked with energy healers, we've worked with quantum physicists. So there isn't anything that we don't utilize in the perspective of bottom line root cause healing here at Transcendence. And I've had several radio shows in the past where we've talked and done training, and I believe in giving lots and lots of tools away. These modalities that we come up with and create are not necessarily, to be bought only. I believe that if you can learn how to do any of the modalities I teach you from the podcasts and radio shows and interviews and Second Sundays, then you can actually train yourself on how to do them, then I would appreciate if you could go and teach 5 people how you did it. This is how we're going to change the world, not by buying one energy medicine session at a time. So I love to do these podcasts when I feel really inspired. And, I kind of started my awakening back in 2007 by reading The Secret. And I'm sure a lot of you out there have picked up that book, or maybe heard someone that has picked up that book and started their journey. For me, it was like a light bulb went on. And obviously it took me down a rabbit hole to discover lots of more things about myself and lots of other things that I had no clue were related to spirituality whatsoever. I just wanted to be happy. I wanted to feel joy. I wanted to look at my kids and not feel afraid that I was screwing them up. I wanted to look in the eyes of someone that I was in a relationship with and feel love towards them and myself. These are the desires that started my journey. Anybody who has, studied my work probably knows about my past. It's not pretty, like a lot of ours. I believe that every saint has been a sinner. I'm not calling myself a saint, but I am a work in progress, just like all of us. And, I truly do, the bulk of the work that I do is childhood work. And the reason why is because by the time I was 30, I didn't feel like a good person. I didn't like myself. I didn't love myself. I had no life skills. I had no tools. I knew very aggressive ways to survive. And what I mean by that is, when you don't learn nurturing, and you don't learn love, and you don't learn a lot of these very important baseline needs of a child, then what you do is you develop your own way to survive in a world that feels like it doesn't support you. And, that's kind of what I did. I was afraid of my own shadow. I, was always a pretty good communicator. I think that's just kind of one of my intuitive abilities. And so I talked my way out of a lot of abuse at times, and learned kind of how to read people really well using my empathetic skills as a child to avoid danger. And that's the only thought that was the only thing I believed that my talents were for, was to survive. And I think a lot of us do that. We use our intuitive greatness to merely survive and not turn it around into a beautiful creative force and make something beautiful. So I've dedicated my last 10 years to making my life beautiful first, and feeling beautiful, and creating a home that's beautiful, and creating relationships that feel and are beautiful. And now I want to share with people how I have done that. So today's podcast is all about the dark side of a law of attraction. And, obviously this is a paradoxical universe. And so there's dark and there's light. And what is the dark actually? The dark is just the absence of where the light is shining. It's like, when the sun, when it rotates and orbits, and all of a sudden we are on the other side of the sun, now there's a shadow and it feels dark, but the sun is not gone. So the light never leaves. And I want us to remember that as we go on this journey together this morning, because no matter how bad it seems, or how bad people appear to be, or how horrible things are happening around you, there's still good within, and there's still the same exact light that is in every one of us. Some of us have just forgotten, and just like I was a child learning to survive, when you are not taught love, and when you do not feel nurturing as a child, you move into a shadow perspective of life. You move into a take situation instead of a give situation. You learn to manipulate. You learn to, contract other people's lives so that yours can feel bigger, because you do not know how to basically self-soothe. You do not know how to self-nurture. So you need to find that from other people and things. And this is all coming from our first 7 years. And the first 7 years is where the brain basically develops all of its belief systems. And then what happens is law of attraction responds to those belief systems, shows you proof of those belief systems, and by the time you become a young adult, you have what's called mindsets. And to me, mindsets are a series of belief systems that have been reinforced with law of attraction. So what is law of attraction? What is it really? I know most of you out there would not disagree with me if I said, we are in a co-creative agreement with gravity. We all feel that. We are not floating off into the universe. But the law of attraction seems to be for a lot of people because they haven't learned to master it. It's one of those things where they go, yeah, that doesn't work, and oh, that's not true. Because they don't understand that what the law of attraction actually is the law of mirrors. It's the law of resonance. It's the law of truth. It's the law of, basically, the law of reflection. And to me, the law of reflection is a little bit different than the law of attraction, because the law of attraction is like a magnetic force that you bring to yourself based on what you are thinking, feeling, and believing. So if I'm a child and I am abused or neglected, in my first 7 years, or maybe even just humiliated for being myself. Maybe I'm a natural empath. Maybe I'm a little extra sensory. Maybe I can feel and see things that other people can't see, and that really scares the people around me. So they humiliate me. They tell me that that's not true. They tell me that what I'm seeing and feeling and thinking isn't real. And in order to be in that family dynamic and feel like part of that family dynamic, I have to give away a piece of myself, or I have to shut down a piece of myself, or I have to be humiliated by something that is genuine and authentic within me. So as I begin to shut that down, where does it go? Where does it go when we shut down aspects of ourselves? Well, it goes into the subconscious. And the subconscious is like a big, giant, let's talk about maybe like a hard drive for all of your thoughts, feelings, and emotions that you're not using on a daily basis. Okay? So it becomes like something that feels less important for your survival and for your, family commitments that you have. So basically what you do is you separate it from yourself and you push it below the surface. So sub means below. So we're putting it below the surface. And because there's so many other things going on in our lives daily, moment by moment, needs and wants, shoulds, have to be here, have to be there, that we begin to start losing association with those other aspects of ourselves that have been disassociated with, denied, neglected, unloved, abused, and we push them into the subconscious mind. And because the thing is energy doesn't die, it just changes form. It has to go somewhere. So all of those humiliating thoughts that you felt as a child because you kept seeing things in the corner and mom and dad said, no, you don't, and you felt maybe ashamed, you maybe felt humiliated, maybe you felt confused, maybe you were resentful over them that they weren't allowed to, you to be yourself. Fill in the blank of the emotion that you felt. These feelings basically dive down deep into the subconscious mind. Now, the subconscious mind is governed by the body. So the body basically stores all of these old emotions, feelings, deep-seated, rooted beliefs, down deep into the cellular tissue. And the cellular tissue is now going to reinforce its emotion in moments where it feels triggered. So now for the rest of your life, whenever someone questions your authenticity or judges your authenticity, you will become triggered. Because there's a cellular memory below the surface that is still holding the exact frame, memory, sensation down deep within itself, that whenever it feels humiliated, resentful, angry, frustrated, confused, it's going to trigger. So the person at the grocery store who tells you, I don't like your shoes, that could take you back to age 5 when mom said, stop looking in the corner, there's nothing there, you're being an idiot. Do you see? There is absolutely no discernment necessarily between the feeling. Humiliation is humiliation, right? Resentment is resentment. So anytime the body starts to sense that coming forward to it, it goes on the defense. And your body does this because it knows that you can only be conscious about 10%. So the rest of the 90% of all of the stories, memories, feelings, sensations, beliefs, mindsets are all below the surface, and they are triggered when needed. So you can already see where I'm going with this podcast today. And the reason that I'm sharing this is because when I first started my spiritual journey, if you want to call it, or my consciousness journey, which I prefer, or my awakening or my awareness process, I worked really hard to manifest things. And, I was kind of in a bad situation where, I wanted to manifest money for my kids. I wanted to manifest a job I loved. I wanted to manifest better health. And no matter what I tried, I would get to those points where it was like right about to happen and the rug would just be pulled out from underneath me. Or I would attract the money and then I would get a surprise bill in the mail that was like for the exact amount that I had become abundant in. Or, I would get really, really well, and then stress would kick in, and I would get triggered, and I would get sick again. I was trapped in codependent relationships because, again, without having a ton of life skills under my belt, I was extremely needy on people, and I didn't believe that I could create my reality, because every time I tried, it felt like I would get to the point where it was right about to manifest, and then I would manifest something bad, and then I would need my family again, or I would need my support system again, and it reinforced that I couldn't do it by myself. So this is the dark side of law of attraction. The law of attraction is the law of the magnetic force. It is bringing you a reality based on the frequencies and vibrations that you are generating. Now, the problem is that it's not just responding to the wants and needs and desires of your conscious 10% awareness. It is responding to the entirety of you. So the whole 100%. So if you have 95, 98% of yourself saying, I'm not good enough, every time I try to be myself, I'm humiliated, I'm judged when I'm myself, my empathy is scary because I feel victimized, I'm not good at anything, I don't deserve money, then in your 10% visualizations, abundance tricks, mantras, affirmations, what do you think you're really going to attract? Because 10% of you is working overtime trying to stay focused on being abundant, and 90% of you is focused on how much lack you have. What happens is it starts to feel like a roller coaster the first few years, because you're so unaware of all this deep-seated trauma and basically emotional violation that's in your field, in your cellular body, that you don't even know what's there until you start working through stuff. And that's why most people don't really move forward. That's why people really don't fully manifest their wildest dreams. It's not because you can't do it. The universe doesn't care what you want, but it can only respond to who you are. And who you are is the totality of your energy field. It's the totality of the body. It's the totality of the stories that are vibrating in the quantum field around you and through you. And if you are sending a signal to the universe of something that you want, and there is also a signal coming from you that says, I can't have it, then you are contradicting yourself, and you will manifest the contradiction. You will manifest getting the dream job and the coworker from hell. You will manifest the money that gets taken. You will manifest, one part of your body becoming healthy and another part giving out. You will manifest, getting in shape to run a 5K and then breaking your leg right before. So you can see that the dark side of law of attraction is not dark at all. It's the shadow aspect. It is telling you, look, there's a lot of things in your subconscious mind that we are manifesting for you so that you can see exactly what's vibrating from below the surface. Because if we don't know what's vibrating below the surface, how can we clean it up? So there's no war against our divine creative abilities. There is nobody trying to stop our consciousness besides ourselves. And we have to make the unconscious conscious. Now, I will tell you that there is even a mind or a consciousness below the subconscious, and we call it the unconscious. And the unconscious stores things that the subconscious isn't even aware of. So, for example, your unconscious mind will store things where maybe you were unconscious at one point, and a conversation was going on around you, and it was still recorded as if it was you experiencing that. Or when you're dead asleep and you're in a delta state of a brainwave where you are basically detached from the body and your consciousness has maybe risen above the physical body, and you're watching TV, all of that is being recorded in your unconscious mind. So when you are unconscious, then your unconscious mind can be recording, and you are not going to be aware whether it's actually happening or it has happened. And one of the stories that I share with my Master of Light workshop classes that I've done for years is I test this, and I proved it because, when I was a little girl, I had this girlfriend, and she was a neighbor, and she was 10 years old, and she was in a horrible, horrible car accident, to the point where she was in a coma for many months. And during this time, we didn't know she was going to make it or not. And, she was just a regular girl, nothing out of the ordinary going on with her. We liked the same things, playing outside, and nothing special. And brown eyes, brown hair. She was just a girl from the neighborhood. And when she awoken, when she finally made it through, she had one blue eye and one green eye. And she began to speak in a British accent. And nobody could figure out what was going on with her. They couldn't figure out, what had changed. But I remember being pretty conscious back then, not that I ever really shared this with anybody, but I remembered that there was a dog it was a husky, and it would roam the floors of the children's hospital at night, and it would lay on the edges of the beds of the sick kids. And it had one blue eye and one green eye. And the intern that did the nightly rounds, or the doctor, or I'm not sure which he was, he had a British accent, and he would sing and talk to all the kids at night as he roamed through the halls. And so when she awoken, some sort of survival mechanism within her developed those two identity perspectives. And that was all from the unconscious. So, yeah, that is a true story. And I didn't even really put it together until I started doing all of this consciousness work. And I was like, wow, yes, I have seen that in motion. I have actually seen that manifest. And there's been a lot of times where, maybe you have witnessed something. When you witnessed a horrible, horrible accident that it shatters you, or it shocks you, or maybe you're involved in an accident. Maybe you've been involved in an accident where someone has passed on. There is going to be a deep, deep level of dark, and when I say dark, I mean absence of love, horrible pain put into your unconscious mind. Now, this is going to be there until it rises to the surface. And sometimes this doesn't rise to the surface, but I promise you, if you have a great life right now, if you've got a roof over your head, and you've got a car that you're driving, and you've got food in your refrigerator, and you've got people who love you, and you're unhappy, or if you feel like there's a hole within you, if you feel like there's something missing, I can promise you all it is, there's nothing missing from you, but there is a lot of trauma, and there is a hole within you because of the things you've been through, witnessed, seen, experienced, whether you've been conscious or unconscious. So when I began to do all of this work, and I began to basically manifest what I want and have it ripped from me, I decided that I couldn't outrun my subconscious or unconscious mind anymore, because I really wanted to experience a blissful life. And I knew that if I walked in the direction of joy, that I would pull up, as I was moving forward, all of the shadows that needed to be healed. I knew that was the recipe. So I didn't, get upset when I started manifesting horrible things when I would walk in the direction of joy, because I knew that they were rising to the surface, not to tell me that I can't have what I want, but showing me where all of my belief systems were. They were showing me where all of my trauma was hidden, because as you start moving in the direction of joy, you pull up all of the roots of all of the dirt that you've been carrying for this lifetime, and last, and the last, and the last, because everything is connected at a root. So instead of, falling down deep into a depression when I would manifest something bad, I would say, okay, I'm going to rejoice here, and I'm going to look at every negative as a positive, and every time something shows itself to me, I can see the trigger, I can feel the trigger, and I can know that all I need to do is sprinkle my love, or whatever I do, whatever technique I'm using at the time, I do a lot of PTSD work. I believe that if you had a childhood, you have PTSD. I believe that you have watched something or witnessed something that's created PTSD. I believe that you've been humiliated at one point in your life. You have resentment, there's fear, there's shame, there's guilt. All those things are PTSD emotional traumas. So as I began to work through a lot of my PTSD, I realized that as I started to move through this, my manifestations got stronger, better, and cleaner, which means that the money started sticking around, that the people that I actually wanted to work with started showing up. The partnerships I really needed to have were right there in front of me. People stopped critiquing me and humiliating me, and I was safe to be authentic. And my body began to heal. And as I watched all of this happen, I realized that the only real spiritual work we ever have to do is work on our own darkness. There is nothing that we need to do outside of us. There is no one that we need to go have a conversation with unless you feel inspired. There isn't any, mom that you need to go and say, how could you do this to me? Although that you might move to that point as far part of your healing if you do need to confront certain people. But really what we need to confront is ourselves. And we have to realize that the law of attraction is just one big old magnetic force to show you exactly what's underneath the surface, what's on the surface, and what's way down deep below the surface. And as you start to move into the direction of joy and bliss, you have got to uncover everything that's not you. Perfect example of one of my favorite people in the whole world. She came to me a couple of years ago, and I asked her what she was, in my office for, and she says, I really, really want to create joy in my life. I want to create joy. And I said, okay, let's do it. And, within 3 months of working together, she lost her job, she lost her fiance, and she lost her house. And from the outside looking in, you'd go, what? How is that? How is that good? Well, to be honest, she wasn't in love with this guy. The job that she was in kept passing her up for promotions. It wasn't her joy. And she couldn't create in the home that she was in because of the fiance. So the universe gave her exactly what she wanted. It took away everything that was in the path of joy. And now she was at ground zero. She had to look at herself in the mirror and realize that the house and the fiance and the job were never going to bring her joy, and that she was going to have to start looking at her self-love issues about why she would be in a loveless relationship, why she would be in a job that didn't honor and support her and value her. And basically, for the next few months, we worked on self-love and healing trauma from, where she learned not to love herself. And we replaced it with self-love, and, within 6 months, she had her dream job, and she had an amazing relationship and a home that she was creating from scratch. And so, it takes a little bit of time, because basically in order to create anything, sometimes we have to break it all the way down. We have to break it down to the surface. It's like, I truly believe in humility, because when we become truly humble, we're malleable, we're bendable, we're flexible, and we're not usually very flexible until we hit that rock bottom, because we are control freaks. And we're control freaks because that's a survival mechanism. I've got to control this, I've got to control that, I've got to control this. And the thing is if you feel like you need to control anything, then what there's a deep-seated feeling of being out of control on the inside. So, on the inside, excuse me. So I hope this is kind of making sense for anybody who's kind of struggled with law of attraction. And, I want to save you some time and busy work and, playing these abundance games and spending virtual dollars. And yes, it's all fantastic and you will get the dollars. But if there is something lurking in the past anywhere in your vibration that says, I don't deserve it, you will not be able to keep it. And we've seen that with lots of people who have won the lottery and then they've lost it all. Lots of people have been through that, and so the thing is not for you to look at someone else's life and determine whether or not this is real for you. Look at your own life and find a place where, you have been really trying to work through something and you just feel stuck or blocked, or, you get it and it's taken, or it's bittersweet, so this is really about your life, not, trying to prove this to you, this theory. I have lived through this theory. I will continue to live through this theory until all of my shadow aspects are transcended. And what I can say is that this is the work that we do every single day in Transcendence, is we basically help you move into the alignment of joy, and then support you as your world starts to basically come to light. And the law of reflection represents that your triggers and your subconscious and your unconscious mind will be reflected in people, places, circumstances, and events constantly. Because you are unaware of what's in your subconscious and unconscious mind, it has to be shown to you in some sort of way. And we say that comes with the law of reflection. So I had this amazing gal at my second Sunday stand up bravely and ask me a question, which I wish more people would do, because we all have these same questions at the root. And she said, I'm in this great, amazing relationship, and I am in love, but my husband, or what she referred to her husband, which I liked, her ex-husband, he was a cheater and a liar, and he was a bad guy. And so she says, I'm afraid that I'm going to attract that again. And I thought that was a great question, because I think a lot of us have moved out of unhealthy relationships that we were abused in. I think a lot of us are standing up for ourselves and finally moving into the direction of our joy. And we're starting to experience that. And then there's that old feeling in the back of, oh gosh, I really don't want to keep attracting this. And I don't want to, every time I look at this new guy, I don't want to think of him as this cheater and this guy. And so she said, what can I do to heal this? And I said, and this is really important because this is where law of reflection comes in, is I said, so what was he reflecting within you? Because you never attract anything that you're not a reflection of. Like attracts like. You can only attract the vibration that you are vibrating at. Seriously. Now, if that's like a newsflash and you're thinking about people that you're in relationships right now that feel really horrible to you, just know that there's an aspect in your shadow or your unconscious or subconscious mind that is a perfect reflection to that energy. So what we did was, in front of a whole room, I asked her where she had cheated herself. I asked her where she had lied to herself. I asked her where she had belittled herself. Because it wasn't about him that she needed to clear. It was about the abuse that we do to ourselves, right? And then I said, well, and in private too, just because we're being completely brutally honest, move through and work through any time where you've cheated someone else or belittled someone else or lied to someone else. Because the thing is, the soul is pretty darn pure. And anything that's out integrity will be stored as a shadow. Anything that you have done, did, felt, imagined is still very tightly wound in your subconscious and unconscious perspectives. And the soul wants complete purity and clarity and love. And love can't exist where fear is, hate is, it can't. So it wants you to clear anything that's vibrating. So it will actually move you into relationships to show you where your subconscious and unconscious minds are vibrating so that you can work through your stuff through another being. That is law of reflection. Law of attraction is what made you attracted to the guy. Law of reflection is him now being a perfect reflection of your subconscious. I hope this makes sense, because this right here will completely set you free. You need to understand that with the law of attraction, you are attracting the wholeness of you, not the parts of you that are awesome and magnificent and perfect. You are attracting the wholeness of you. So it will feel like an up and down process until you start to clear lots of trauma. So we have lots of obviously techniques that we use here at Transcendence. One of them is the trigger work. The trigger work is basically to find the reflection of yourself in someone else, especially when you're judging them. When you judge someone, you're basically, for another period of time, disassociating the truth of yourself. Perfect example of this, and I use my husband as a lot, poor thing, because obviously he was my greatest spiritual teacher because he triggered the living hell out of me. He was angry. He had so much rage within him when we first got married, and it scared me because I did not have that capability. I didn't even have the capability to get mad at anything. I was the peacemaker, the band-aid of the family. I was the, let me go be the comic relief here, or let me lighten up this situation, because that was a technique I learned early on to stop abuse. And so here I am, 35 years old in the same situation. Basically, law of attraction brought me face to face with something that I really, really needed to clear in order for me to basically love myself and have a life that I wanted. I was attracted to the very thing that I needed to see deep down within myself to clear. So when I started doing this trigger work, I started to question this whole process because I just could not find the place in me that was angry. I could not find the rage in me. And as I started to go deeper and ask myself the questions, I started to realize that my particular child, my childhood, I was never allowed to be angry. I was never allowed to have an opinion about anything. And my husband had an opinion about everything, and it drove me nuts. And I realized that my inner child, because I was never allowed to experience anger, which is a very, very natural elevator emotion that gets you out of stuckness, and it can take you into stuckness, but it's a really powerful emotion. And because I was completely not allowed to feel it as a child, I resented anyone who was allowed to be angry. I was appalled and disgusted by rage. And what I realized is that my inner child never had the opportunity to be mad, which means I never had the opportunity to stand up and say, this isn't okay for me. And being able to watch my husband do that at any given moment, it was almost like a slap in the face for my ego. And so what I realized is that I was being shown him as a way to set my own anger free, because he began to push me to the limits, and I started to give birth to something that was probably unconscious, and I started getting mad. And I started getting mad at so many things. And I'm going to tell you how freeing it was to go through a process where it was totally safe and allowed to be angry. And I then had to just thank him. And the magic of the universe is that we are all connected. So as I began to heal that issue within me and process all of that deep-seated anger and rage over basically being abused as a child, I noticed that my husband started to calm way down. And we no longer had rage issues. We no longer had the irrational outbursts of insanity when someone would leave their shoe in the middle of the floor. It was like this calmness that kind of came over both of us. So it was like his, projection was my reflection. And when my projection started in, he saw his reflection. And so it was this beautiful co-creation of this letting go of this old, old trauma that law of attraction gracefully brought us to the surface so that we could see it. Now, the ego does not see any of this perspective. When it gets triggered, it goes into defense mode, it projects, it denies, it disassociates. So I'm hoping that this particular podcast at least plants a seed for you to be able to see your life much more divinely, much more joyfully, and know that anything that you're manifesting right now that you do not choose to experience is just a byproduct of something below the surface that needs your time, attention, and love. So I want to end this podcast saying that I'm really working day and night to get my online academy up and running, because this Master of Light course that I have is basically all of these different trauma modalities to clear all of your subconscious and unconscious programming. And I am working it day and night, and we have our life coaching certification online right now, and that is Transcendence International Consciousness Academy. You can definitely go to our website, www.transcendencekc.com, get our contact information, send us an email. You can email me directly at jessalstrom@gmail.com. And we are working day and night to get that live, because I would love to just have everybody be able to just in the moment work through your triggers, realize that everything is for your good, everything is for your clearing, and get us all on this path where law of attraction becomes this blissful, graceful, creative force again within us. And even though it actually already is. So I will leave you with that today. Please email me your ideas. I have a new radio show that's going to be live on Wednesday night. I will put the channel and the link in the outline of this video here in this podcast, and look for that. It is live, so you can call in and we can work through your triggers right there on the air. And I just want to tell you all that I'm so grateful for the opportunity to be able to share this information with you, because this has really been a lifesaver for me, and I wouldn't be in this position that I am today if I had not done this journey myself. So remember that you are love. Remember that you have all the tools within you. Remember that every single thing that's happening in your life is for good reason. And listen to this as many times as you need to. Pass it on, share it, and look for the next podcast. Until next time, have a great day.
Thank you for joining Jessica on this transcending episode. Email us directly at jessicaalstrom@gmail.com with your questions and personal challenges you would like addressed on the show. And join us on next week's podcast. You are not alone, and remember, your higher self speaks to you through people, places, circumstances, and events.